There are some halachic topics as well. And one of them is known as the sugya of Tircha de Tzibura, which is when something is taking place and it's a bit of a headache for the tzibur. You know, certain times Chazal say that we really take into account the tircha that can be on the masses, and that can have an impact on halacha. So this is sourced in a Gemara in Masechta Brachas. There are sheets over here, plenty of sheets. This Gemara is actually not on the sheet, but we'll begin with it. It's a Gemara in Brachas Daf Yud Beis, in which the Gemara says that the Chazal wanted that every morning and evening during Kriyas Shema we should say the Parsha of Balak, or at least a big chunk of it.
What does that mean, like the whole Parsha as well?
Or a big chunk of it, or at least all the Nevuos of Bilam. Why? Because it says one of the psukim in one of the prophecies of Bilam, it says Kara Shachav Kalavi Ekaria Ukalavi Mi Kimenu, that the Yidden have crouched like a lion, and like a lion Mi Kimenu, who can lift them up? So because it speaks about Shachav lying down and Yikimenu and coming up, it sounds awfully familiar and similar to the pasuk by Kriyas Shema of V'shenantam levanecha v'dibarta ba'am b'shach b'chov kumecha. You should say Kriyas Shema when you lie down at night and when you wake up in the morning. So similarly, we would say this pasuk in Parshas Balak, and since you can't just say, a half a pasuk, you would say the entire parsha, which would make davening a lot longer than it is. So why don't we do it, says the Gemara? Why don't we do this in Yom Kippur? I'll pass one down over there. Why don't we do this? Because of Tircha de Tzibura, the Gemara says. So it was a great idea, it was a grand idea, but then it was, it was voted against because of the Tircha de Tzibura. So that's a source to the idea that we're not going to make a takana which is going to be difficult and a pressure or stress for the masses.
So you're basically telling us, if you guys think that Kriyat Shema is long enough process every night, what it could have been.
I don't think it's very long at all. But, yes, it definitely could have been long. It could have been long. You're right. So imagine that Achman, you think davening is long. Exactly, it could have been much worse. You should be happy. You should count your brachas that it is what it is. Okay, so we begin with number one. It's a Gemara in Yuma. Speaking about Yom Kippur, the Kohen Gadol would stand up on Yom Kippur and he would read from a Sefer Torah to the Yidden. What would he read? He would read three things. He would read from Parshas Achremos, which is where the halachas of Yom Kippur are stated. Then he would flip a little bit and read from Parshas Emer, which is shortly later, the part in Parshas Emer that speaks about Yom Kippur. And the third thing he needed to say was from Parshas Pinchas. But to get from Emer to Pinchas is a bit of a roll, a bit of a glila. You would have to roll the Sefer. And the Mishnah in Yuma says that he wouldn't be goylel, he would not roll it. Instead, he would just close the Sefer and he would say the portion of Parshas Pinchas off by heart. That is what the Mishnah says. So number one, let's read it together. Uba'asar shel chumash hapkudim, the part of Parshas Pinchas that speaks about Yom Kippur, kair al peh, he would say off by heart. So Frek Gemara, Amai, why? Niglol v'nikri, let him continue to roll, just like he did from Achremus to Emer. Let him roll a bit further and read from inside. You're supposed to read from inside the text. In fact, the Gemara says in Gittin that you're not allowed to read from outside the text. Dvarim shebeksav, things which are from the written law, you're not allowed to read them out loud. It's based on a pasuk, in fact, in Parshas Kisisa, towards the end of Ksav L'chos Advarim Me'ela, that these words have to be written. And the Gemara learns from there that the written word must remain written. You could read it from a scroll, or at least from being written down. Not Baal Peh. And some hold it's an Isur D'oraisa. There happens to be a major debate if it's only a rabbinic problem or if it's even Isur D'oraisa, because it is based on a pasuk in Kisisa. The shaila is that really what the pasuk means, and therefore the din would be D'oraisa, or it's taking the pasuk out of context. It's just an asmachta. The Chacham created it, didn't they? Linked it on the pasuk. So that's a debate. But either way, it is a prohibition.
But things are struggle with it. You're allowed to
Correct. But we're talking about a view like the whole maftir from Parshas Pinchas is not sugar al peh. But definitely there are exceptions. Yeah, pasuk which everybody knows, or if you're saying something but derech tachnunim. Right, or a supplication like Tehillim. If you're davening, it's fine. And there's other heterim as well. If someone's giving a drush and is quoting from psukim, it's not so practical that every time he quotes a pasuk, he's going to quickly pick up a chumash. But it's actually known that the Rebbe often, when he would quote psukim by Fabrengens, there was a misquote in the pasuk.
The rest on purpose?
Yeah, and it was on purpose. It was exactly. Well, it appeared to be a stutter, a hesitation, but halachically, and even if it wasn't on purpose, fakert, like the Rebbe Marash said that his body was such a merkava, was a chariot to the will of Hashem, so the body couldn't say the whole pasuk out loud. So even if it was a mistake, fakert, that shows another mila, that the guf was such a merkava to the Eibishter that it couldn't even produce the pasuk. But very often the Rebbe would quote psukim and not exactly. And the simple halachic reason is because it's not so pashut that you can to quote an obscure pasuk bal peh in public is a problem. But yet the Gemara says in Yuma that they did it and it was official. So frek the Gemara why? So Amar Rav Huna bereid Rav Yeshua Amar Rav Sheshes lefi she'ein goyel in Sefer Torah b'tzibur, because for the Kohen Gadol or even people to come and help him roll the Sefer Torah in the tzibur, we don't do it. Mipnei kavod tzibur. It's not honorable for the congregation. It's not honorable for them to sit and wait while it's being rolled. Now hold. But
to take on two Sefer Torahs like you do on Shabbat.
Good. So the Gemara asked it. I was actually going to cut off the piece over here, but I thought somebody would ask that. So we could. V'neisi achrina. The Gemara Taka says, let's bring another one. V'neisi achrina v'nikri. Why didn't they bring a second one? So the Gemara here brings 2 days. Rav Huna bar Yehuda Amar Mishum Pagam Mishal Rishon. One day it says, listen, it's not going to look good for the first Sefer Torah. It's going to appear that the first Sefer Torah either was found to be puzzle, or that the first Sefer Torah doesn't have Parshas Pinchas in it. It's not respectful for the first Sefer Torah. Reish Lakish Amar Mishum Bracha Shein Tzricha. Reish Lakish says if you bring out a new Sefer Torah, you got to make a new bracha for the new scroll.
Can't make on two Sefer Torah.
Well, if you're going to bring one and then later on bring the other one.
Sefer Torah is not the right place. You have to go there.
So that's what we do, but in the Beis Hamikdash they wouldn't do it. In the Beis Hamikdash they wouldn't do it because of kavod tzibur. So the shaila is this idea of kavod hatzibur, honor of the congregation. How does it relate to the Gemara we started off with in Brachas about tircha de tzibura? Are they one and the same or not? So first, I just want to mention Ayala asked. Now wait a second. What the Gemara is saying over here in the Beis Hamikdash, they wouldn't bring out a new Sefer Torah. So you have two reasons: either you'd have to make a new bracha, or because it fares bad for the first Sefer Torah. Okay, but then there's an option of being goylul the first Sefer Torah. No, we don't want to do that because you're making people wait. So therefore you say it bal peh, which ordinarily is a prohibition, but we're going to waive it because of kavod hatzibur. It's not nice to make them wait. But in shuls,
Yigal, please.
So if you go into your local Orthodox shul, you'll see the practice is the following. Whenever we need to read from more than one Sefer Torah, we take out more than one Sefer Torah. And in fact, the Shulchan Aruch paskins that you need to take out a few Sefer Torah. Don't take out one and roll around, based on this Gemara that rolling around is not covered for the tzibur to make them wait. So the Chatzchil, you got to take out a few. What if you only have one? Or you have two and you need three? What if you don't have a requisite amount of Sifrei Torah? So then the halach is you have to roll.
You don't say by heart.
And Rabbi Yosef Kai, the Shulchan Aruch says, you want to read Bal Peh? No, you can't do that. It's a Tircha de Tzibura. Tircha de Tzibura is pushed away in order to roll the Sefer Torah. So everybody wants to know, why is the halacha, Lamais in your shul, different than what the Gemara says in Yuma they did in the Beis HaMikdash? The Gemara says in Yuma that kavod hatzibur is so strong that you don't roll, even if you only have one Sefer Torah. But the halacha Lamais says, no, you do roll. You never see that. people are getting grumpy. Why are you rolling? So you know what the Balkar says, you know what? I'll say it Balpeh. Listen carefully. You never heard that before, because that's not what we do. We actually roll. Why? Because it pushes away cover that sibur. So how does that match up with the Gemara? So there's an interesting debate between the Magen Avraham and the Avnei Nezer of how to answer that. The Magen Avraham famously holds that there's a difference between your local Orthodox shul and the Holy Temple. No, but what's the difference? Why is there a difference? Because the Holy Temple had all of the Yidden there. And you cannot assume that all of the Yidden are going to be Meichel on their time. Whereas if you have a little shtibul or shul, even if you have a couple hundred people there, it's a small tzibur relatively, and therefore you can assume that they're Meichel on their kavod. That's what the Magen Avraham says. Which means the Magen Avraham is establishing that whenever there's a halacha which is related to the kavod of the tzibur has the right to forego and be Meichel. It's not so poshut. There happens to be a major debate in the poskim. You know, a woman going chazan, or maybe she's not chayiv, but a woman laning from the Sefer Torah, it says a woman shouldn't do it because it's not covered hatzibur. It's halacha. The reason that a woman shouldn't lane, Gemara Megillah, is because of covered hatzibur. It's not honorable for the tzibur. So the shaila is in many places in the world, many modern Orthodox shuls, if they're more modern than Orthodox, they want to push the taina that the Magen Avraham says that whenever it's totally on the tzibur, they can be meichel. So we want to hear the woman lane. Can they do that?
You got the Magen Avraham.
Are modern Orthodox shows that well versed with the Magen Avraham?
When they need to be, I'm sure.
Yes, listen, some of them are big scholars.
They are.
Usually the big scholars aren't the one that are pushing for it though. But it's they give an interesting shir about it, right, on a Sunday morning, and then, myself excluded. And then the people, they run with it. They run with it.
Issues, though. Kalisha and stuff like that.
Yeah.
What about the
There was a whole, right near in Melbourne where I grew up, so right, in the Frum community, there was a shul they called Shira Chadasha. Shira, the new song. And there was everything. They had bent halacha, everything they had an explanation. They found some source for everything. But the women practically ran the shul. They had the bimah they had the mechitza. No, there was a mechitza there too, but there was a bimah, right? They had a mechitza going down the bimah, so the balkar, the woman was on one side, the man getting the aliyah was on the other side.
Where was it?
In Melbourne.
Melbourne?
Yeah. Yeah, so you can imagine, from shul, a mechitza going, imagine.
But if they
but you can ask them, what are they doing? They would say, what? We're not amaratzim. The Gemara says the reason the women can't do it is because of kavod tzibur. The Magen Avraham holds women that the tzibur could be meichel. Either way, that's the answer of the Magen Avraham. And it's not so poshut, because if you have 250 people in shul and they start spending 5 minutes long the Sefer Torah, you could be sure that there are many people that are not meichel on their kavod, Yeah. But the Avnei Nezer gives a geschmack beer. Again, to answer Ayal Shaila, why is the practice in shul different than the Beis HaMikdash? The Avnei Nezer says a very simple distinction. In the Beis HaMikdash, whose obligation was it to read from that scroll? It was the Kohen Gadol. It wasn't mine, it wasn't anybody else's, it was the Kohen Gadol. So what? He just needed everybody to be there to hear. So now they're going to wait while he's busy rolling his scroll. It's not their obligation, it's his. Why should they wait for him? But in a regular Shabbos morning by Kriya, you can't have any tightness to the Baal Korah. It's not his obligation. It's our obligation just as much as his. So, you're not waiting for somebody else. You're waiting because you have to wait. So according to that Mahalach of the Avnei Nezer, you don't need a hold like the Magen Avraham that a tzibur could be meichel. Because Taka, there are those that hold it's based on a bach. There are those that hold that tzibur can't be meichel, and we have a different explanation between the Beis Hamikdash and the shul, which is that it depends whose chiyuv it is. If it's everybody's chiyuv, not so fast you could say, let's do it quick because if it's a tircha for people, everybody has to get this done. It's almost like take Hataras Nedarim on Erev Rosh Hashanah. Really, you could do it with 3 people. The Alter Rebbe says toiv to have 10. It takes another half hour, sometimes even longer. It's a busy day out of Rosh Hashanah. So people tying a tircha de tzibura. Yeah, but you need 10 like that guy needs 10. So if it's you're not waiting for him, you're waiting because you also want to have the ability of the 10 because it's better to do it that way. So based on the Avnei Nezer, you wouldn't be able to pull out the tircha de tzibura card. I'm doing it with 3 people. Because that's if you're waiting for one guy, but if it's if everybody needs to be there for themselves, you don't apply the logic. So that's an important debate between the Magen Avraham and the Avnei Nezer of how to explain why the din in number one, we don't see practice Lamaisa. But upon him, it is somewhat practice Lamaisa because you do take out 2 or 3 Sefer Torah L'chatchila. L'chatchila, you don't roll around. It's only b'di'ev if there's one Sefer Torah L'chatchila, you take out as many as you need. Fine. And the Gemara there says Kavod HaTzibur. It's because of the honor of the Tzibur. So the Shail is, how does that relate to Tircha de Tzibur, which is how we started this year, which is about the Gemara in Brachas, which says that we would have said Parshas Bolak every morning and evening if not for Tircha de Tzibur. Are these two things one and the same or not? So let's go to number 2. Number 2 is a Gemara in Saita. The Gemara there says a strange statement that the tzibur, the congregation, doesn't have to wait while the chazan removes the drapings that are on the bima. What in the world is that talking about? So let's read Rashi, number 2. Back in the day, they didn't keep the Sefer Torah in the shul. They kept it somewhere else. No one knew where it was, a secret location. Or even if they did, it wasn't kept in the shul. So Kol's man that the tzibur was in shul, it was safer somewhere else. They would keep the Sefer Torah outside in a shed, where it was safer. Then they would bring it to the shul on Monday, Thursday, Shabbos, they'd bring it. But what would they do to the bima? So imagine you had this type of bima with railings. They would put canvases, curtains, drape it over all 4 sides to make it a nice... person begodim noim, they would put nice drapings, saviv hateva, around the bima, umanichin oisa b'seich, and put the Sefer Torah in the middle. So it's almost like making a canopy. Ukishayotzin misham, now when everybody leaves, and they take the Sefer Torah lo'ilicha to take it to the house where it will be kept. So if the chazan is first going to take off, now the halacha is like this: you're not supposed to leave while the Sefer Torah is waiting, right? So if the chazan is first going to remove all the beautiful drapings and then take the Sefer Torah, everyone's waiting. No. So the chazan first has to take the Sefer Torah out. Everybody leaves, and then he comes back and he removes the drapings. When we say chazan here refers to the shamash. Chazan, the Marshal says the word chazan comes from the word chazan, which means to see. The shamash is always looking out to make sure everything is in order.
Where they keep the Sefer Torah in the Beis
Hamikdash? The Mishnah there says it was kept in a Beis HaKnesses. It was kept in a little shul. Rashi there says that on Har HaBayis, near the Azara, there was a little shul, and in the shul there was a little Sefer Torah. And that's where the Sefer Torah came from. That's what it says there in Yuma.
Where was the
Rashi just says on Har HaBayis, near the Azara, there was a shul. What should I tell you? I wasn't there, but that's what Rashi says. So, back to this Rashi over here. Don't take off the begodim while the tzibur is waiting, because they have to wait there to remove the Sefer Torah. And Rashi says, Toirach tzibur. It's a tircha for the tzibur to wait there in the Sefer Torah. Rather, remove the Sefer Torah right away. And then the shamash will have to leave the Sefer Torah in that house. Everybody leaves the shul. The shamash will come back and finish his job of taking up all the drapings, wherever they were kept. The point of Rashi is that Rashi says the words Toirach Tzibur, even though the Gemara there in Saita says Kavod Tzibur. I didn't quote the whole lashon of the Gemara in Saita, but the Gemara there says that he shouldn't take off the drapings in front of the people because of the kavod of the tzibur, the honor. And Rashi there says Toirach Tzibur. So apparently they're interchangeable. That it's not honorable for the tzibur to make them wait and be matriach them. Now, obviously, they're not for sure one and the same. There are many dinim of kavod tzibur which aren't a tircha. For example, a woman laning, where the Gemara says she shouldn't do it because it's not respectful. It's not a tircha. It's not going to take any longer, right? Unless she's going to sing more, So kavod tzibur is definitely not one and the same as tircha. And so to the Gemara we started off with, that we don't say Parshas Bolak every morning and evening. And the Gemara in Bracha says, because it's a tircha, It's hard to say because of covet. You know, the Chachamim wanted to give us a new mitzvah, but they didn't because it's not respectful. It's hard to say those words. It sounds like that Tircha Tzibur is also not synonymous with covet. But this one apparently is, and so to the one in number 1 would be. When we say don't start rolling Sifrei Torah in front of the tzibur because it's not honorable, l'chayr means it's not respectful to make them wait. So sometimes covet that tzibur is the same as Tircha, but obviously they can they have their own identities as well. Okay, so far
elements, but they're the same place. It's the same idea. Comes from the same place. You have there's different elements for covet.
Right. But they're not one of the different dimensions. They're different dimensions.
It's the same idea, though.
Right.
It's the same general category.
Right, but sometimes they're mamish interchangeable.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's subcategories under the same umbrella. Yeah. Fine. Okay, one more point before we go weiter is that.
Bottom line is the tzibur rules.
Hold on. All right. Well, we'll see. We'll see. Not so fast. But we'll see. So, just one more thing before we go is this idea of Tircha de Tzibur not being matriach de Tzibur. How important is it? Is it a rabbinic prohibition? Is it a biblical prohibition? So there happens to be a major debate. The Sdei Chemed, Reb Chizkiah di Medini, he writes. We spoke about him in the past. It's a beautiful story about him. He writes that it's a debate between him, and he was a humble man, don't take this the wrong way, between him and somebody known as the Mahari Al-Ghazi. Yankov Yisrael Al-Ghazi was one of the great poskim. Started off in Turkey. You're talking early 1700s. And he moved to Eretz Yisrael, and he was a big gun. And his son was known as the Ma'arit al-Ghazi, perhaps even more famous. The Ma'arit al-Ghazi wrote very important Lomdische works, and was a very, very prominent Sfardische family. The Ma'arit the son was buddy buds with the Chidah in Eretz Yisrael, but the Ma'arit al-Ghazi's father, the Ma'ari al-Ghazi, he wrote a sefer Shalmei Tzibur. And in the sefer Shalmei Tzibur, he contends it's a biblical prohibition to be matriach the tzibur. What would be the source?
Still until today, by the way?
Hold on. Everything's going to be about. No. We're going to. You have to stay to the end. You can't leave this year. You can't leave early. No. So the Sdei Chemed disagrees. The Sdei Chemed. It's a machlokes ben Sfardim. You know, they have to sort it out. The Ashkenazim lo nichnasu lemachlokes. The Sfardim have to battle it out. The Ma'ari al-Ghazi believes it's biblical. What would be a source? There's a psikta that Rav Kana which says, Hashem tells the Yidden, I said to say Kriya Shema, but I told you could say it B'lechtecha b'derech while you're walking. I never said you have to. Do it as it's convenient for you. B'shach b'chov kumecha, you know, B'lechtecha b'derech while you're walking. So the Medrash says, Hashem says, I wasn't trying to make things difficult for you. While you're going anyways, just do the mitzvah on the way. So that would be a source that the Eibush is not looking to be matriach the masses, and that would be a source possibly from that pasuk that Tircha de Tzibur has some source in the Torah. But I will say that the Sdei Chemed himself disagrees. The Chizkiah di Medini believes that there's no source from the Torah. You'll never violate a biblical command. It's only the Rabbanon. But it is a rabbinic isser. Now you just have to think for a second. In number 1, the Kohen Gadol in the Beis HaMikdash is going to be reading a part of Chumash Baal Peh, right? Because rolling the Sefer Torah will be a tircha of the tzibur. But when it comes to reading part of it Baal Peh, I mentioned before, some hold that's an Isser D'oraisa. Based on the pasuk in Kisisa that Ksav L'chad has to be written, can't be Baal Peh. So if that's biblical, how in the world could the Kohen Gadol violate the biblical prohibition to avoid Tircha de Tzibura? What's Tircha de Tzibura? It must be like the Ma'ari al-Ghazi. The Tircha de Tzibura itself is biblical. What's the Sdei Chemed going to do? So it's the Sdei Chemed must hold that even though it's only the Rabbanon, but just like we have an individual's kavod habrius, an individual's person's honor is able to push away a mitzvah min HaTorah in certain cases. It's a Gemara in Brachas, kavod habrius, a person's honor can push away a doraisa. For example, an old man doesn't have to bend down and pick up a lost object if it's not bakavadik. He's violating a mitzvah deraisa of Hashavas Aveda. His kavod abrius it trumps. It's more important. Kavod abrius of an individual can be doicha deraisa passively. You don't, because how are you going to break the mitzvah Hashavas Aveda? By being still, passive. But the Steichemet might hold that kavod habrius of the public, tircha d'tzibur, which is the honor of the public, could allow you to break a deraisa even actively. And that's why the Kohen Gadol would be able to. So that's a bit of a lomdish sugya surrounding number one, and it all depends on how much weight do we really give to tircha d'tzibur. But either way, let's go to number 3. 3 and 4 are both tshuvas of the holy Rashba. The Rashba of Shloime ibn Aderes, one of the greatest all-time poskim. He lived in Barcelona in Spain. He was born roughly around the year 1235, passed away in 1310 roughly, and one of the greatest rabbanim of his generation and of all generations. Very important. Sha'alta, says the Rashba, you asked me, Heicha dav sefer Torah pasuach likrispoi. You have a sefer Torah ready to lay, and the Gabbai, calls up the Kohen, and the Kohen's in the middle of Shemoneh Esrei. V'haya Kohen bebeis hakneses is asuk b'tfil. The Kohen's in the middle of davening. B'makom she'ena rasha lahafsik, where he can't take the aliyah. He's in Shemoneh Esrei, let's say. Imam tinin lo, do we wait ad shesayim tefiloseh? Tircha d'tzibur, they're going to wait a few minutes. Too bad. And loy chayshinono, and we won't care about waiting because it says v'kidashtoi. V'kidashtoi, there's a mitzvah of being mekadosh the Kohen. V'kidashtoi. We have an obligation to sanctify the Kohen, and part of that obligation is to allow the Kohen to have the first aliyah. So it's very important. The Shas, how important is it? You have tircha d'tzibur on one side, v'kidashtoi on the other side. Oiloi. So they asked the Rashba, and let's see what he says. Mistabro, it makes sense she'ein mamtinin loy, that you don't wait. Shaloi b'chol makom amru sheyaktim Kohen. Don't think we always say the Kohen comes first. You might want to leave for this one. No. Sha'ari v'makim Talmud Chacham v'afilu ger koydem loy. Hold on. The halacha is that the truth is, back in the day, we don't do this anymore, but back in the day, if you had a big Talmud Chacham, right, and you had a Kohen, the Kohen would give up his aliyah for the Talmud Chacham. We don't do this anymore. But because today we believe we don't really have any full-fledged Talmud Chachams, and also every Kohen today is a
can't be that way.
No. Because the halacha was already paskin 600, 700 years ago that today we don't really have. Lots of halachas changed because we don't really have a real scholar. You remember we saw when we learned about the whole smicha controversy. The Radvaz says 500 years ago, I don't think anyone today can paskin all in the whole Torah. It just doesn't exist anymore like it used to. The real reason is because today the Kohanim themselves are big scholars. That's the real reason. Anyhow, but back in the day, the Talmud Chacham would come first. In fact, the Gemara says in the Dorim, why was the first base of Mikdash destroyed? Shaloi baruchu b'Torah tzchila, because they didn't make a bracha on the Torah. Some say what that means is that the Talmidei Chachamim didn't take the first aliyah. They said, I don't need it. They were humble, but it was humility in the wrong place. They were showing that their Torah knowledge is not of any worth. And that's why the first temple was destroyed, according to some. Right. Well, listen,
That's the reason why you should have it.
Oh, well, right. But because these days we don't really have a full-fledged Talmud Chacham, so b'meila, the Kohen always goes first. But the Rashba is saying in Inyan the Talmud Chacham is supposed to go first, right? Now, a Talmud Chacham versus the Tzibur. Who's more important? The Tzibur. So make a Kal V'chomer. If the Talmud Chacham should have precedence to the Kohen, for sure the Tzibur. So we're not going to make everybody wait while the Kohen finishes Shemoneh Esrei. I'm just reading it. Listen, I'm just reporting. V'lo the kavod at Tzibur shouldn't be less than a Talmud Chacham. And he says more than that. The Mtzois, during Shemoneh Esrei on Shabbos, davening, Shemoneh Esrei is quite short. You have 3 brachas in the beginning, 3 at the end, and the whole middle was removed. There's only 1 bracha in the middle. All the middle ones of Shemoneh Esrei, kitzru b'Shabbos, mishum tircha d'tzibur. Says the Rashba, you know why davening is short on Shabbos? They didn't, the Chazal, the Anshe Knesset HaGedolah did not, Shabbos is a day off. They didn't want us to sweat on Shabbos. Now it's funny because the Shabbos is the longest davening in the week, so this kind of backfired. But you could say what Ayal said, because davening's so long, it's a good thing that Shemoneh Esrei is short, you know? It's a good thing that at least Shemoneh Esrei gets short. V'chein choshev b'kam mekoymes of tircha de tzibura. V'shur over here, that it's not just the tzibur waiting, the Torah is waiting. You have the honor of the Sefer Torah that it shouldn't be open and wait. It's a tircha de tzibura and zilusa de tzibura. It's also belittling for the tzibur that this kohen is busy davening and they're all waiting.
It makes sense. Avram Avinu, Aaron Kohen
Right.
is a man of peace. There's
Yeah.
no way he would make the tzibur wait, and there's no way he would make the tzibur
Right.
pay.
So
It doesn't say that's the reason why we made a short tefillah on Shabbos.
well, I'll tell you, brings in Shulchan Aruch as well.
What? Gemara doesn't say that.
It tells you that the river brings it. How can you do it?
No, this is the reason. This is the reason. What? Even if you called him up.
And we're not kosher for
L'chayra, because or else l'chayra, if there's a difference, if you called him up, you would imagine the Rashba would make. You're right. L'chayra, once you call him up, if you call him up and you don't let him, you have another issue, which is right. People are going to think he's not an authentic kohen.
That's a whole other issue.
But the Rashba doesn't mention that.
You're
You know,
You're not supposed to.
yeah, but why he should make that distinction. L'chayra, the Rashba should make that clear distinction. If you called him, it's too late.
Nah, but that's a different halacha. That's
I
a whole
don't know.
different set
I don't
of
know.
circumstances. Meaning, you
Maybe,
can't bring in
perhaps.
every variation of what it could be. He's telling you the general
It's only
rule.
one other variation. I don't know if it's clearly that you would have to wait.
But that's
Unless back in the day they never had this case that they called someone up and then they found out where he was davening, where he was holding.
Yeah, I mean, you would think the gabbai would know what's going on.
Because they know he's Shemini, he can't come up, so he's not even the Kiddush.
He's not thinking even about the guy.
As far as Kiddush, but the Shaz, what about as far as the
Everybody the same thing. They know that he can't.
right? So okay, right. So B'shachar, so you're suggesting that Taka the Rashba, even if you called him up, there's no pagam because people will know it's because it's the middle of davening. Right. That's what I would guess because the fact that the Rashba doesn't differentiate, l'chayra makes you think that either way you wouldn't wait. But you're right. We don't know for sure. The two of you can battle it out afterwards. Al kapanim. So that's a psak of the Rashba. So let's go.
The Lord doesn't say this.
I did say it's a tshuva of the Rashba. Okay, it's a tshuva of the Rashba. Okay, fine. 4.
Place after.
Because Tfilas Koil is Shaykh and Shabbos.
I go.
That's a din of Shulchan Aruch. He made a mistake. And that means when you have
Okay.
to start after Chayim, you have to continue because it's Shaykh and Shabbos. Just because it's Tircha, he didn't make you do it.
Okay, all right. Let's go weiter because we're going to get to the climax soon. Number 4 is another tshuva of the Rashba. So you see, the Rashba is quite sharp. He said the Sefer Torah, the Yikara the Sefer Torah, Tircha de Tzibura, and he also threw in Zilusa de Tzibura, the belittling of the Tzibura, just to sharpen his argument. Zilusa de Tzibura. But we go to number 4. Sha'al ta'oi. This is actually in a different. It's not the same letter. It's actually 100 letters later. Somebody asked the Rashba Shah, there's a shliach said there's a chazan who has a beautiful voice. V'noah l'shoim, everybody loves listening to it. And his ma'irich in his tefillah, in order, you know why he's ma'irich? In order that people should, he's lengthy. In order people should enjoy his voice. U'misnoeh bazeh, and he's beautified with this. V'samech b'koiloi, he's very pleased about his voice. V'daito b'kach shu mispalel
That's what he's thinking. That's
yeah,
that's what his intention- that's his intention.
exactly. Yeah,
What?
His intention is
V'daita
to-
b'kach be'eshu mispalel.
That's a different story.
No,
See how short tzibur?
Hold on. V'daita b'kach be'eshu mispalel. As he's davening, he's thinking about how beautiful his voice is. You know, there's a long story about to say. In Australia, for years, my father used to have a chazan in his shul that would come from Eretz Yisrael. He was an older yid. He was an old yid, long white beard. And he was, he felt he was a chazan, and a chassidish yid, not a Lubavitcher, but he was a chassid. And when he would daven, he used to have a little piece of paper next to his machzor. So my father once asked him, "What's this?" So he showed it to him. It said on the paper, "In Dal Lifnei Mi'ato Imid." Remember who you're standing in front of. My father asked, "What's that?" So he said he once went by the Rebbe for $. And he told the Rebbe that Tishrei is coming up and he's going to be going chazan somewhere. He wants a bracha. And the Rebbe told him, often the chazanim get so caught up in their nusach and their voice and this and that they should forget who they're standing in front of. So he says, I took that to mean that, that I got to remember, so I have this piece of paper. And he says, whenever I daven, I feel like I'm getting caught up in the songs and the nusach and the chazanah, so I quickly take a look at the paper. So my father asked him what brought him to the Rebbe, and that's a very long, interesting story for another time. But Al Kopanim, says the Rashba, this guy is clearly, he has in mind while he's davening for the beautiful voice. And he says, Roy hu bekach v'shei somach b'liboy. And not just that, he says, what's wrong? Let me daven. Why can't I enjoy davening? And people are telling him, no. He's like, well, I'm also a person. I also have feelings. Why can't I be happy in my heart? So, im roy limchas boy. Should we, put him down? That protest, that you got to daven tachnunim. You got to beseech God, not show off your beautiful voice. And how can he offer supplications while he's smiling about how beautiful his chazanah sounds? It's contradictory. You cry. So says the Rashba in the Tshuva, Dvarim elu achar kavanas halev heim amurim. It all depends on what's really going on in the guy's heart. If the shliach tzibur zeh is happy in his heart, it's okay if the chazan's smiling. He doesn't have to cry. The shah, why is he smiling? Why is the chazan have a big smile on his face? If it's because he's partially enjoying davening to the Eibishter, and he likes the fact that he could daven with a nice voice, what's the problem? He's samech mitoch yira. The simcha is intertwined with fear of Hashem. Tov yolav bracha. He's happy that he can offer a beautiful song to Hashem. That's okay. That's fine. Echad min advarim hamachuyavim. You know what's obligatory to someone to go chazan? Sheyesh lo ne'ima v'koyle orav. He has to have a nice voice. Kedetanya Masechta Tainus in Daf Tezayin, Amdu B'Tfilah, when it comes time to daven, Afopi, even though there's a zaken, you have an old person, there's a chacham, we don't tell them to go chazan. Elo harogil. So we who goes chazan? The guy that usually goes. Rabbi Yehuda Eimer, Metapel the Einloi, which is Metupel the Einloi, which is that his kids are getting older already, so they can kind of support themselves, but he can't support them. So he has issues of parnasa. Yesh lo yegiya b'sada, he works hard in the field. Beis oreikon, but he brings nothing home. The guy really has what to daven about. Zaken, if he's old, it's good. Pirkei noah, that he had a nice youth. Shval berch is humble. Umarut salam, everybody likes him. V'yesh lo ne'ima. He has the curler is two things. Ne'ima, the curler are his pashut, he has a sweet voice, and ne'ima means he davens nicely. It was after the Chmielnicki massacres. The Shach was in the city of Vilna, and there was somebody there, the Be'er HaGoyla, the Zayd of the Vilna Gaon, Reb Moshe Rivkis, and he was out of Parnasa. And the Shach wanted that this Be'er HaGoyla, was a huge goyin, should get the job of Chazanos in the big shul of a Tishrei, make some money. So the Shach spoke to the board about them letting the Be'er HaGoyla be Chazan. They told the Shach he has a horrible voice. The Shach says, wait a second, look in the Gemara Tainus. There's a whole list of things, of credentials to be a Chazan. The Be'er HaGoyla, you could check off everything. One thing he doesn't have, but everything else he could check off. Anyhow.
Did they let him be Chazan?
The end of the story, I don't know. But they made a separate minyan,
Yeah.
They told the Shach you could daven there, But if the Shach and Be'er HaGoyla are davening in a minyan, you can imagine that they would have been full. Anyhow, so says the Rashba, having a beautiful voice is encouraged. And he said before, it's a chiv. Elamai, tzorach l'spal b'koy v'droish. Elamai, you can't get carried away. You got to daven remembering. Like,
not the fake Shach.
What?
Not the fake
we're talking about in the 1600s, the real Shach. Like it says in Brachas, you got to daven koy v'droish with humility. And you got to stand be'ema like you're standing in front of God. Like the Gemara says, when you daven, you should imagine the Eibush is right in front of you. And ein daven l'mispal, not you don't daven having spoken right before and not laughing right before. You got to prepare yourself, and therefore you have to have the right mood when you daven. So this shliach tzibur, he says, if he's happy but he has yira together at the same time, why does he have a big smile? He pashut has a geschmack and a joy to sing a beautiful nigun to the Eibishter. That's a beautiful thing, says the Rashba. It says, Ivdu es Hashem b'yira v'gilu birada, the famous words. Gilu birada means to exalt, to have joy. Birada means with trepidation. Harizem meshubach. But he finishes off. If the guy's entire kavanah is to show off his his vocal power and his beautiful voice, harizem meguna, that is atrocious. It says in Yirmiyah, Nasna alai b'kaila, she turns to me with her voice, al kain snesia, therefore I hate her.
Yeah, but this is not something about Tircha Tzibura. This seems like there's a couple of people who are not happy with this guy's quality of his personage. Who is he? He's an Erlich Yid. He's not an Erlich Yid. Nobody's complaining about Tircha Tzibura. They're saying he's not an Erlich Yid.
No.
There's a couple of people who are sitting in the back of the show, there's a Canim, don't care about the songs anyways, and they're going, he's not from enough. That's what this is.
No.
That's what this is.
That's the cover-up of their
There's
claim.
nothing, yeah, of course that's the cover up their claim. There's no Tircha Tzibura here, though.
No. So the reason why I put it here is because over the past hundreds of years, whenever there's been an issue of why is the Chazan gargling, why is it taking so everyone's waiting, all the Rabbanim quote this truth of the Rashba. Apparently, people understood that the underlying claim over here was why is the guy taking everyone for a ride, and I'm just saying that
the Rashba says Tircha Tzibura so many other times. And
why doesn't he bring it over here?
What's the last thing that he said? Tircha Tzibura, the third
Zelusa.
Not one word in this whole long thing has anything to do with Tircha Tzibura, Kavod Tzibura, or Zelusa, which proves that there's no way that Rashba is talking about that. The fact that somebody uses it to go.
Hold on. Okay. So, but the thing is, that over the past couple hundred years, whenever people have spoken to the heads of the shul, we're going to get rid of the chazan, it's taking too long. This tshuva, the Raj, was important to know because it was always brought to the forefront where the Rajba says having somebody getting lost in his songs is actually a beautiful thing. All right.
So Tzibura is a major thing according to what you said. It's not
right. No, but when the chazan is doing an appropriate thing, the tzibur has to bite their tongue.
Yeah.
The tzibur has to bite their tongue.
Yeah,
hold on. Let's move on to the. Let's move on.
Yeah, but not if it's the Tircha Tzibura.
No.
Tircha Tzibur. If the Tzibur doesn't want to sing Chazan, they fire him.
You have to go
because the Tircha Tzibur. This is not about.
They could fire him, but they're not right.
Yeah.
They're not. No, they could fire him, but it doesn't mean they're right.
This is not about This has nothing to do with Tircha Tzibur.
No, but in other words,
people are complaining he's not a from Yid.
No, in other words, hold on. In other words, that's why we're discussing it.
Still, then, because it's a nice thing, he
No,
can stay.
Yeah, he's saying that to the old complainers.
That's your distinction, man.
How can you possibly say this has anything to do with Tircha Tzibur when the Rashba has three categories? He says it multiple times, and in this whole thing he doesn't mention it once.
Because if you imagine the case, we're talking about a case where the tzibur is
it doesn't say
getting
the Tzibur
annoyed.
is complaining about the time.
Mayrich, he said Mayrich a few times.
He's
Mayrich bit philosophy.
These people are saying it because he's not an honest guy. He's
That's
really
their
a
cover
selfish
up.
guy.
They don't want to say it, they want to go eat shalom. This is their cover up. This is their cover up. All right, fine. Okay. And hold on. So let's move on just to the last. Now, I'll give you an example. We don't always say Tircha de Tzibura trumps. There's a very important psak of the Ur Zarua, one of the greatest of all the Rishonim, Rabbi Yitzchak of Vienna, where he says if a tzibur misses Kriyas HaTorah 1 week, right? You had over Corona, it happens, you miss Kriyas HaTorah. He says the next week you got to do it again. You got to the next week when you read the next week's parsha, you have to make up what you missed. He says you're making people wait for hours. He says Tircha Tzibura has its limits. Sometimes you got to do what you got to do. It's not Parshas Balescha this week or 10 weeks later. If you missed it, you got to make it up.
Makes sense. It would also make sense.
Yeah, it's the same thing like Tarsan Dharma. You got to do it.
What if you miss all the weeks?
Everybody, so it's equal.
What if you miss all the weeks? Only 1 week later? If you miss all the weeks?
Most say only 2 parshas.
Right, 2 parshas. Yeah.
Like that makes
Right,
sense.
down by Tashlama, Right.
And we did it outside.
Right. Okay. So let's move to number 5 for a moment. So let's move to number 5 for a moment. We're going to open a can of worms, but we've got to remain it to the end to get clarity. There's a psak from the Binyamin Ze'ev. The Binyamin, he was a Rav in Greece, in Arta, in Greece. He was born in the end of the 1400s. He passed away early 1500s, or mid 1500s. Like 1540, 1545, he passed away. So he's one of the early Achronim. And, for us, he's definitely considered a major paisik, although in his times, he was unfortunately caught up in heavy controversy. He was living he was living in Greece, in Arta, and there was a certain shaila about Naguna, a woman who had gone missing, and there was a guy who was what we call Masiach Lefi Tumma, who was witness testifying, but he wasn't officially testifying. He was just saying off his cuff that I happen to know. Did I say the woman was missing? Pardon me, the husband. Obviously, the husband was missing. That the guy was Masiach Lefi Tumma. He was just talking off the cuff that he knows that the husband died, etc. And based on that testimony, this the Binyamin Ze'ev was matir, the woman to remarry. Other Rabbanim vehemently disagreed. The Mahardach, Reb David Koyen of Carrefour, also one of the greatest poskim of that time, vehemently disagreed. It turned into a major machlokes. It got to the point that the rabbis of Venice, which is, right nearby, right across the water over there was a group of very prominent rabbis in Venice. They pretty much put the Binyamin Ze'ev in Cherem. They stripped him of his smicha. They assered him to paskin. They put him in Cherem if he gives any more psakim. They stripped all the smichas that he gave to his students. Yeah, it was pretty serious. And they forbade him from ever being a Rav again. And one of the Rabbanim wrote such a sharp letter that his machrim, he puts in Cherem anyone that calls the Binyamin Ze'ev a Rav. That's how sharp it came. It happens to be that in the issue of the Aguna, one of the great poskim of the time, Rabbi Yosef Taitachak, who had the big yeshiva in Salonika, he actually he agreed with the Binyamin Ze'ev, which was a major support. But the issues with the rabbis in Venice was not just the Aguna issue. There were other psakim that they felt Binyamin Ze'ev was off, and they partially wanted to strip him of all his rabbinic power. And they were anyone that even calls him the Rav of Arta, they wanted to be machrim. It got pretty messy. That happened in the early. What? Yeah, but in the details of that case, obviously, but in the details of that case, some Rabbanim felt that he was off. But it was other halachic issues as well that stirred the pot. So it was in the early 1530s. He was already an old man when this happened. He was almost 60 years old when this happened. He had an illustrious career, and then when he was 60s, completely forget about disregarded by the other Rabbanim. He was partial. They stripped him of his smicha, one of the greatest Rabbanim of the time. It's even just hard to relate to him. But it sounds like after he was living a private life, but then he put out his sefer, which is Binyamin Ze'ev. He put it out a couple of years before he passed away. And in his sefer Binyamin Ze'ev, he put in all of those tshuvas that had stirred all the controversies. He put them all in. He didn't back down from any of it. So I just want to show you in number 6, the Marshal, who was a couple 30, 40 years younger than him. The Marshal was one of the greatest of that generation, living in Lublin. Just to show you what the Marshal writes about him, just to get a bit of a flavor.
Charles after him?
Marshal was 40 years younger than him. They overlap. Marshal was born in 1510. He passed away in 1545.
Same time at Ramon.
Yeah. Says the Marshal. Number 6. Go to number 6. V'chol mashke mazke boiset shuva. Everything the Binyamin Ze'ev says in that shuva, ein shum pilpul chodosh miliboy. There's nothing new on his own. Rak mashe hetik. He's just quoting from others. One time he adds a raya and a tam. Al kain therefore ani omer I warn the rabbim, says the Marshal. Lo yelech shum adam acher sifroi. Nobody should follow his sefer. Even leisr, even to take his chumras, for sure not to be matir. Unless you're medaktik achadvorv, unless you actually learn the sugya properly, and you think that is right based on your own understanding, that you could do. But stam to rely on him, you shouldn't. Kikol dvor. I hope the Binyamin Ze'ev doesn't mind that we're reading this up there in heaven. Kikol dvor of gnuvim. Everything he writes is stolen words. It's really just quoting from. He's plagiarizing from others. Aruchim is way too long. Pilpul she'enu l'tzeirich. That's not such a bad. That's not such an insult.
Why is it if I'm quoting?
Well, connected panim mara acher. I guess.
He starts off ancient people, which sounds like a compliment.
Right.
He's not saying anything.
No, but he doesn't quote it b'shem the other people. He's plagiarizing. He's quoting things.
So
as
he's
if it's
attacking
his.
him, but
he's
he's not
stealing
attacking
him.
his substance. It seems like his
No.
substance he can't attack.
Hold on. He's not done yet.
He says it's fine.
He's quoting.
V'loy halach b'dercham, and the Marshal said. Now the Marshal says he wasn't like the people before him, and he quotes here a whole group of people that were early 1400s. You know, the Ma'aril, the Maharai, that's a Trumas Hadeshin, the Ma'arik, and the Ma'ariv. All their words Nechoiches are clear. Even the Ma'arik is Ma'arich very much, but Dvar of Kshurim Kshoz Barz, at least his words are, are very. Umagia, they reached to the Roy Mashamayim, he was so sharp. And then he says like this, V'shari le mare, may God forgive the Binyamin Zev. Because before this, I didn't quote the whole thing, before this, he shows how the Binyamin Zev has some major misquotes in his Chuvas. He says, Im hu tzaddik, if the Binyamin Zev was taka, a holy man, why would the Eibush have allowed all these misquotes to come out? La mehevi HaKadosh Baruch Hu, why would God have allowed a takala to come through him? The Binyamin Zev wrote his own Chuvas, and he v'nasan l'tfus ha'seif miyadu mipiv. It was actually the Binyamin Zev was one of the first Sfarim of Chuvas to actually be given to print from the author himself. This is before electricity, obviously, but they had a manual printing, and he himself brought the papers to the Tfus, so you can't blame it.
Somebody else.
Usually you can blame it on somebody else. This guy made a mistake. He said it's a crazy thing. If he was a tzaddik, why would God have allowed? So you see that in his times, and the Shach was even 100 years later. The Shach writes that the Binyamin Zev was, his works are full of mistakes and bulbulim. He didn't have many fans. The funny thing is, though, that even though in his time he was, all the Rabbanim of Venice and of Turkey and Istanbul, they made his life highly difficult. You see what the Marshal writes. And by the way, the Yad Malachi later on, he quotes this Marshal, and he says, the only reason I'm writing this, I'm not trying to bashmutz the Binyamin Zev, but he says that, listen, you just have to know the context in order that if you come across a machlokes between the Binyamin Zev and one of the big Rishonim, says in Yad Malachi, you got to know it's not really a contest. So he quotes the Marshal. He says, I'm looking to bashmutz the Binyamin Zev, but you got to understand, you got to know the background to know the weight of his chuvas.
He didn't listen to the Chachamim, so they made this happen.
So here's the thing. The funny thing is that the Ramah was a big fan of the Binyamin Zev, and he quotes him a lot. That's the funny thing. So look at number 5. We have a psak of the Ramah. And, all right, let's finish up over here. The Ramah says, you're davening in shul. Everybody has finished davening, except for the Rav. Now we have to wait. There's a happy ending of it. Says the Ramah, V'im yesh yichidim b'kahal sh'marichim b'tfilah. If some people in the kahal are marich, ein l'shatz lahamtin aleim. The chazan shouldn't wait. Wait. Give me 5 minutes. Even chashuv ya'ir. Even if they're the most chashuv, we're going to see things change. V'chein, so too, if there was a minyan in the shul and they want to start davening, and the adam chashuv or the gadol is on the way, adayin loiba, you don't wait for him. Says the Ramah, Binyamin Ze'ev, this is a tshuva of the Binyamin Ze'ev. If you look into Binyamin Ze'ev there, he speaks, you get 2 halachas. One of them is if the tzibur is ready to daven and the chosh of a person's on his way, or he's already here and you're waiting him for Shemona Esrei. In both cases, says the Binyamin Ze'ev, you don't wait. He says even more, he says that we're going to punish the chazan if he waits. Because of tircha de tzibura. That's what the Ramah paskins. Comes the Magen Avram right underneath, and he says, that was Amol, not anymore. Says the Ein Lo Shatz Lamtin, don't wait. Says the Magen Avram, it's true that the Binyamin Ze'ev and the Ramah Paskin, you don't wait. Achshav, but nowadays, Noagul Lahamtin, we do wait on the Av Bez, and we wait for the Rav. Why? Why? The Magen Avram. This is the Magen Avram. Number 5 is the Magen Avram. So this is written in the end of the 1600s. Venerally Hatam, because he says a fascinating reason. Most people daven fast. So if everybody davens Shemona in 2 minutes, Tircha de Tzibur, we can't wait for the rabbi. What do you mean? Who asked the Tzibur to daven in 2 minutes? Who?
Bastard.
And he says, if you have a couple people want to daven milah b'milah, this is written in the 1600s already. This is not a 2020 thing. They're not going to be able to say Kedusha with the Tzibur because the Medina is going so fast. Lochen mamtinim. We wait in order to allow whoever wants to daven properly to be able to get the Shemona Esrei and still answer Kedusha. V'lochen niruli, says the Magen Avram, even if the Rav isn't there, you should imagine that it's there. Yesh lahamta mispal mila b'mila. You wait that amount of time because maybe somebody else in the shul wants to daven like a mensch. And we're just avol kishamayich taka. If the person you're waiting for is mayrich is going longer then don't wait for him. Like it says about Rabbi Akiva, the Gemara says in Brachas, when Rabbi Akiva davened alone, he would daven for a long time, and he would start in this corner of the room, he would end up in the other corner of the room. But when he davened in a tzibur, he was quick. Hayam Mekatzvil, he was quick. So that's the psak of the Magen Avram. The reason you can't do something, the tzibur can't daven in 1.5 minutes and then say, Tircha the tzibur, let's get going. Can't do that. Because of B'Sefer Chsidim. Now here's a very interesting thing. That, the first I just want to say that there was a tshuva of Rabbi Kiva Eger. It wasn't printed in his original tshuva, so it was found later. And in the tshuva of Rabbi Kiva Eger, he says that it's true that the Ramon, the Binyamin Ze'ev say, you don't wait for anyone. The tzibur's ready, you get going, you knock. Says Rabbi Kiva Eger, but now it's changed, as the Magen Avram says. Now it's changed, like the Magen Avram says. And Rabbi Kiva Eger says, this is now a fundamental of Judaism, he says. And he says, Rabbi Kiva Eger says, if you don't wait for the Rav, it's a spiral descent from there. You mask it with Tircha de Tzibura. But then you daven in 1.5 minutes, and then boom, 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 everything becomes convenient Judaism. It's all about what works for me. He said, Rabbi Kiva Eger said, it's a spiral descent. If you don't wait for the Rav, it all starts from there. Fascinating shuvah.
But it's not a thing because everybody else has the chiyuv to daven.
We davened already. Everyone's ready. No. Fakir. Okay, let's just finish up. But here's the thing. There's a fascinating thing. That hold on. Imagine that the chosh of a person, whoever it might be, is still doing Shemoneh Esrei, and he knows they're waiting for him. What if he doesn't want them to? What should he do? So the Sefer Chassidim says, "Im echad tzarich lahayich." This is lav dafka the Rav. Anyone, if one guy wants to be mayrich, the Sefer Chassidim, v'yarei sheisloitzu alav. This is an interesting thing. One guy wants to daven by riches, but he's worried people are going to laugh at him. He's allowed to take 3 steps back, although it's in the middle of Shemoneh Esrei. When the chazan starts, Afal Pisha Adayin, he didn't finish davening. In order people should think that he finished. And then afterwards, then he takes 3 steps forward and he continues davening. So the Sefer Chassidim is saying you're allowed to do that in order people shouldn't think, oh, who are you to be davening by riches? So comes the Stei Chemed, and I'm going to just finish with this point. The Stei Chemed says, where he lived, they used to wait for him. The Stei Chemed was a big Rav, and they used to wait for him, of course. He didn't like it. So he writes in his tshuva, I have 2 options. I have lots of options. One of them I could daven quick, but that wasn't an option. He says, I can't daven as fast as the tzibur. So he says, I could either do the Sefer Chassidim trick, I could take my 3 steps back, they'll think I finished, and that's it. And they'll start Chazar Sashatz, and then I'll take my 3 steps forward and I'll continue davening. The other option, he says, is that while you're doing Shemoneh Esrei, I could just go like this to the chazan, as if to tell him which is better. So he says, Be'emes, this is better. Just moving your hand, making that remez is more halachically acceptable than taking 3 steps back. But he says a fascinating thing. He says, but the gaiva, imagine you have one guy davening by riches, and he's busy looking at the chaz. Don't wait for me. He says, the gaiva, it's a shmek from gaiva. He says, I can't bring myself to do that. So I take 3 steps back as if I finished. And then I do my Shemoneh Esrei.
Whatever it is.
That makes sense.
Anyhow. So, right. Anyhow, so... Right. So that's halachically bemis that would be better, but the Stei Chemed says Pashut, it's like it's a shmek von gaiva. So better take. But upon him, the fact is the Magen Avram says a hain tikateg, we wait for the Rav, and Rabbi Kiva Eger writes so interestingly that If you don't, it's a spiral descent, and the vort is once it
Spiral
becomes
descent, Ayah.
once it becomes a convenient Judaism.
Definition in Hebrew for that?
But the
From
bottom
there
line
is
is,
a-
it's ultimately
Anyhow,
it's the
okay.
Rambam. It's the middle road. Spiral descent is if you go too fast. There's no mitzvah to go too slow.
Went downhill.
Yeah, that's based on this Magen Avraham.
Mila b'mila.